Seussical is a musical comedy that adapts the zaniness and colorful creativity of the many popular picture books written by Theodore Seuss Geisel, aka Dr. Seuss, into a story primarily based on Horton the Elephant and Gertrude McFuzz. The show debuted on Broadway in the year 2000 but was critically panned and didn't do too well financially, as it is a very odd show in terms of characters and music, and most of the audience of Dr. Seuss books, which is kids, can't really make it to Broadway. Still, it provides a great mashup of your favorite Seuss characters, including the Cat in the Hat, Horton, and the Grinch. But exactly how many of Seuss's stories are referenced within this show? That's what we're here to find out today. This is where I play the headache intro with the ba-bum-bum. First, let's set up some ground rules. Dr. Seuss wrote over 60 books over the course of his life under a few different pen names. However, we will only be counting the books written under the Dr. Seuss pen name and not Geisel's other works. We're also not including stories written with Dr. Seuss's characters after his death, like The Cat in the Hat knows a lot about that, but we will be counting Seuss's books that he wrote and were published after his death in 1991. Seussical also received a few rewrites after leaving Broadway, mainly about JoJo's role in the story, and I will be taking those into account because if you see the show nowadays, that's the version you'll be seeing. Also, we're not including any sticker books, educational resources, or anything like that, just the stories designed to be entertaining. And finally, let's address the issue of short stories. Several books published by Seuss are collections of short stories, and those will be counted as one big book rather than each story counting individually. You may assume this wouldn't matter too much, but there are two characters in Seussical that this affects. Those characters are Gertrude McFuzz, a bird who's the female lead, Horton's unrequited love interest and next-door neighbor, and Yertle the turtle, who appears as a judge during the climax of Horton's story, who both originated in Yertle the Turtle and other stories in 1958. In Yertle's story, he establishes a dictatorship and stacks all the turtles of the small pond until his hubris and the turtle at the bottom burping cause him to come crashing down. In Gertrude's story, she feels self-conscious about her one-feathered tail and is given pills by her doctor to grow more feathers, before she grows too many feathers and cannot fly. She then has the extra feathers plucked out and is happy with her one feather, much like she is in the musical. Gertrude is credited on the Dr. Seuss wiki with this book of short stories as her sole appearance rather than her short story, and therefore this book will count as one reference in the musical for the purposes of this video. Okay, now that we have all that established, let's go into the rest of the characters. Horton the Elephant has several stories to his name, including Horton Hatches the Egg, Horton Hears a Who, and Horton the Quuggerbug and other lost stories, which I only just found out about. He's an incredibly patient, kind, and noble character, from babysitting an egg until it hatches, protecting a small world with everyone laughing at him, or helping a small bug. That's 3 more stories to be added to the final count. Other named characters from within Seussical that appeared in the Horton series include Maisie, the Elephant Bird, the Sour Kangaroo and Little Kangaroo, the Wickersham Brothers, Vlad Vladikoff, the Mayor of Whoville and his wife, Jojo, and the rest of Whoville from Horton's Dust Speck. But wait, you're asking, aren't the Who's from another notable Dr. Seuss book? Why yes, How the Grinch Stole Christmas can also be referenced from the Who's, and the appearance of the Grinch himself, who runs a Christmas pageant in Whoville each year. This raises the question of if the original Grinch book takes place within Horton's universe on the Speck, which is crazy to think about. And then we have General Genghis Khan Schmitz, who originates from I Had Trouble in Getting to Salo-Saloo in 1965, where he drafts the main character to war. Of course, within Seussical, he also lives in Whoville and runs a military academy that trains soldiers to fight in the butter battle for the right of Who's to eat their bread butter side up. And wouldn't you know it, that is a reference to the Butter Battle book from 1984. 2 more for the counter. Anyway, one more named character left in the cast to cover, and that's... Okay, actually, let's come back to him, because that's a whole other can of worms. Let's get to references within the songs in the script. From song titles alone, we have the opening number being a reference to All the Things You Can Think from 1975, JoJo's song It's Possible having the alternate title and making many references to McElligot's Pool, a Dr. Seuss book from 1947, the song Havin' a Hunch referencing Hunches and Bunches from 1982, How Lucky You Are referencing Did I Ever Tell You How Lucky You Are from 1973, and the song Salo-Saloo once again referencing that story. Not bad. There's also a song called The Circus McGurkus that the Dr. Seuss wiki says references the book If I Ran the Circus, so hey, let's add that to the count too. Why not? And of course, how could we forget the final song of the show, Green Eggs and Ham, which is of course a reference to the Book of Pocket Boners. Green Eggs and Ham from 1960. I don't know how that other book got in here. It isn't referenced at all in the show. This title is actually referenced other times in the show as well, with it being the chant that Genghis Khan Schmitz's cadets do throughout the show. In fact, that's probably a good segue into references within song lyrics and dialogue. The song Here on Who introduces us to the town of Whoville and references several different stories, including the previously mentioned Butter Battle book and the Grinch. There's also a reference to truffula trees on the other side of town being cut down, which is, of course, a reference to a Lorax. Fun fact, there was originally going to be a scene in the show where JoJo visited the Onceler, but it was too long and therefore cut from the show. Then, right after that, the mayor and his wife are seen talking to their son Jojo, and they say, "Stop telling such outlandish tales, stop turning minnows into whales," which is a reference to this exact line in one of Seuss's earlier works, and to think that I saw it on Mulberry Street, where the main character Marco has similar crazy things to Jojo. The song Havin' a Hunch has lyrics saying, "Oh, the places you'll go," referencing the 1990 story that was one of the last books Seuss published before his death in the following year. And the song Chasing the Who's has a lyric of Horton passing sneetches on beaches, referencing the story from 1961 about social conflict between those with and without stars on their bellies. At one point, Gertrude mentions she has very large feet, and another point says she sprained her little toe, which allows me to shoe in a reference to the foot book. In The People vs. Horton the Elephant, Horton says, "You can lock me up in a zoo." This could be a reference to If I Ran the Zoo from 1950. That's a bit of a stretch, but I think I'll count it. This actually raises a pretty good point. You see, the thing about live theater is that each performance may have some different interpretation of the script and therefore have different references. It's possible features fish. Could there be one fish, two fish, red fish, or blue fish? A costume designer could take inspiration from a Walk It in Your Pocket or a Zebra or beyond. Could sets be based off of random buildings from these stories? Could they include homages to random characters like Hop on Pop or Mr. Brown? Do these personalized features make the show a reference to Dr. Seuss's My Book About Me, the book Dr. Seuss made for people to personalize? No, this is just silly. It has to be in the script for it to count as a reference. Now, what else is there? Okay, let's do this. The Cat in the Hat is by far the most popular Dr. Seuss character, literally being the mascot of his brand. He appears in logos of many books, specials, merchandise, and even got TV shows, a god-awful movie, and spin-offs galore. Most of this stuff will not count. I'm only going to look at books featuring the cat himself or cat-adjacent characters. Also, just because something has the cat as a logo doesn't mean it's anywhere close to counting. Let's go down the list. Of course, we start with his first appearance in 1954, where he shows two kids the joy of bending the rules to have fun, but not going too far. This is followed up by The Cat in the Hat Comes Back, in which he returns to the house with a legion of mini-cats that help him cause mischief and clean up. These mini-cats went on to have several adventures of their own, whether with the big cat himself, like in I Can Read With My Eyes Shut in 1978, or going on solo adventures like I Can Lick 30 Tigers Today and other stories in 1969, which is actually about fighting tigers. There's also I Can Draw It Myself from 1970, but that's a coloring book and I won't count that. And then there's the Cat in the Hat Learning Library, a series of 37 books featuring the cat, Thing 1 and Thing 2, and Sally and Conrad from the original book. But these books are not written by Dr. Seuss and also will not be counted, so that's a bit of a relief. In fact, the last two books I could find by Seuss himself that featured the cat were The Cat's Quizzer from 1976 and Daisy-Headed Maisie, published in 1995 after his death. So in total, we'll be adding 6 books featuring the cat to our total. After all of this, we have the grand total of 25 books that have references within the script of Seussical. Wow. You would think there would be a lot more, but this is almost half of all books under the Dr. Seuss name, and it's pretty much all of his well-known ones, plus some of his first works, all mashed together. Honestly, hats off to the creators for getting this many picture books into a decent musical. And you know what? It turned out pretty good. I think it lives up to Seuss's legacy, both in how it treats his characters and the stories, and how the musical tackles the ideas of imagination and creativity that he always wrote about. I know of a few people who don't like the show, and I totally get it, as it is a weird show both musically and in the fact that it takes a bunch of random Dr. Seuss characters, but if you're unfamiliar with it, I'd suggest give it a listen. You may just enjoy it. If there's anything you think I missed, feel free to politely let me know in the comments, as I'm sure that I overlooked some incredibly specific and minute detail from one of Seuss's stories. Also, leave a like if you enjoyed this video. It was pretty different from what I normally do here, but I would be interested in trying new things, so subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay in touch for more of my silly little videos. Thanks for watching, see you in Sala Salou, and goodbye!